Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they pledge you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week, we dive into another world, another time in the Age of Wonder. That's right. We're going to be discussing the 1982 film, The Dark Crystal, along with the making of documentary and a couple of Dark Crystal related TV appearances. This week is also, just completely coincidentally, the 40th anniversary of The Dark Crystal. It's like we planned it. We didn't, I promise you.
It's kind of weird how often stuff like that happens. I feel like there's a lot of, coincidentally. I can't remember any of them, but it does feel like that happens a lot.
I think it's one of those weird things where because we're racing through the years at the pace we are, there's going to be times where it just happens to line up.
Stopped clock kind of situation, right?
Yeah, it's just, we're right once every 80 episodes. But yeah, it does coincidentally line up that the premiere, the big, bombastic red carpet premiere of The Dark Crystal was on December 13th. We are currently recording this on December 11th. And the movie came out nationwide on December 17th, which is just a couple of days ago if you're listening to this episode when it came out. And before we get into talking about the movie specifically too much, we did want to mention, hey, this movie is a lot. It has its own wiki. We didn't even need Muppet Wiki for this one because just the lore is so deep and people care so much about this movie and are very passionate about the, knowing all the characters and the creatures. It almost feels like a Star Wars, Lord of the Rings level interest. And
it is not like Star Wars, Matt. We must be very clear. We're contractually obligated to say Jin did not bring balance to the Force. It's very different, okay?
Yes, as we will discuss later, Jim Henson himself makes the distinction, hey, nope, not like Star Wars.
Except also he says it pretty much is Star Wars.
Yeah. But yeah, all that to say, we will probably mess some facts up because we have not seen this movie in a very long time. I haven't, at least. And there's so much to know about this film that, yeah, I think we could spend a year doing research for this episode and we still would have missed something or have messed something up in the facts. So apologies ahead of time.
Yeah, and don't yell at us if we're mean to the movie a little bit. It's just a movie.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think will be interesting to talk about because I haven't talked to Sam about this yet, on our feelings on the film. But I did ask Twitter what they thought of it because I knew this movie was somewhat divisive because I've seen, people going to the Great Conjunction out in LA. Clearly, people are very passionate about this film. They love this film. But then I hear a lot of other people say, that film's boring as hell. And when we asked on Twitter, we got a whole bunch of responses, and a number of them said things like, rarely has a movie looked and sounded so magnificent, which is why it's such a shame that the story is so bland and the protagonist is so nothing. And that's from Ryan Rowe from Tough Pigs. But other people, like @CritNoms, said, it is the reason I went to film school, a masterclass in design. I love it just as much as I did when I was little. And other people are saying, I like it a lot. I was so immersed in the world while watching it, I kind of wish it was weirder. And that's from @Starman's Art. And so it's kind of all over the place.
I feel like all of those statements are not at odds with each other, though.
Yes, that is true. I think it's what you connect with in this movie matters a lot. And I think there's stuff for everybody. And I think if you want the really weird creatures and lore, it's there. If you want the beautiful design and character choices, those are there. But
if you want a beautiful, complicated story, very well written, maybe then it's not for you.
I mean, complicated story might be the right way to describe it.
Yeah,
but
I guess that's
not
true.
in the positive terms.
Yeah.
Not complicated in that like they're dealing with deep emotions that they're fighting with themselves.
Yeah.
Complicated in that it's hard to understand.
Yeah. Everyone talks all fucked up in it.
Well, and as we'll talk about a little bit, originally they talked even more fucked up.
I thought about that, though. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. But I thought about that the whole time, and then I thought, maybe that would have been better.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that version, but audiences at the time said, no, thank you. So yeah, I guess before we get into it again here, I want to ask you, Sam, your history with the Dark Crystal.
I have basically none. I've seen it before, but probably in like high school, and remember thinking, this is boring. And then I went to that Jim Henson thing in Seattle. The what's it called?
It was at the Museum of Pop Culture, the MoPop that they have there in Seattle.
Right.
The Illustration Unlimited, I believe, or Imagination
Unlimited? Is that what it was?
Something like that, I'm sure.
That. And I saw the guys there. I saw they have the Gelflings, and they had maybe Agra?
They did have Agra. I have a picture of Agra on my phone. That's terrifying.
And I remember seeing them and being like, no, they're cool. But I hadn't revisited the movie until this. And it's not a movie that I spend a lot of time thinking about. How about you?
Somewhat the same, actually. I had friends in high school who I'm very grateful for, who introduced me to things like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. But that friend was really into them in the way that people are. And I couldn't quite get there with it. Like, I watched it. I was like, yeah, that's cool. But they were like, no, but it's like the greatest movie. And I'm like, that one? You sure? And so, yeah, I remember that was like my memory of it was that it was kind of boring. And so I don't think I had watched it since high school. And so I didn't think about it much since then. And seeing the puppets was cool, but they didn't have really a connection for me. Yeah. And even when the Age of Resistance Netflix show came out, I didn't watch it because as much as I was interested in the idea of it, my knowledge of Dark Crystal was so limited that I was like, I don't think I'm going to get anything out of this show.
And I'm not rewatching the movie, for God's sake.
Yeah, someone would have to make me do a podcast about the Muppets to make me rewatch that movie.
But I felt the same way, where that show looked interesting, but I didn't have the foundation to watch it.
But I will say, just, starting off the conversation here, I came away from this not loving this movie, but extremely fascinated by every aspect of this movie, from the behind the scenes to the what's on the screen. And I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, but I think I will go watch the Netflix series now. And I just happened to go to the comic book shop this past week, and they were having a sale, and I bought a few different volumes.
You're Dark Crystal pilled.
Yeah. So I bought the sequel comic, and I bought some of the prequel comics to dive into this lore just a little bit more.
Okay. I feel the same way. I think, and I'll talk about this in my summary a little bit, but it feels like they should have almost played the documentary before the movie, so that when you watch the movie, you were like, oh, that was hard to do. I understand now. And it's crazy to look at it and be like, they built all of this. Like, there's almost nothing that's natural in the whole movie, and it's all just like fabricated. And it looks expensive. It looks audacious.
I think that's something that maybe people at the time would have been slightly more immediately wowed by, because we've seen Avengers Endgame. Like, anything that can be imagined on a screen, we have seen at this point.
Right.
But at the time, the idea of doing an entire movie that looked like this, with these kinds of creatures that you can't always tell where the human is, but there's a human in there somewhere. Yeah. I feel like that's why it's a good comparison to Star Wars, I think, is because there's certain aliens in Star Wars and like in the cantina that you're like, I know that has to be a human, but it also could be an alien. And I think that looking at the Skeksis and the Mystics, you're just like, okay, I can, if I think about it for a minute, I can realize where the human is in there. But at the same time, I could almost believe that's a real weird vulture creature.
Yeah. It's funny when sometimes in the movie there'll pop up like just like a little weasel looking guy who's like, that's clearly just like That looks like Emmett Otter.
Yeah, they have like these like little like black spidery looking things that are just like puffballs. They like blow across the set. And
Yeah,
like,
what the
that's a
hell?
creature.
Were those like? Well, I will
Yeah, I
get
don't know.
into it.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead, Sam?
Okay.
What do we watch this week?
On December 13th, 1982, after more than 5 years of development, The Dark Crystal hits the theaters. In a high fantasy world where everyone is some sort of fucked up looking creature, the most fucked up of them all are the Skeksis, who terrorize the land from their ancient, mysterious castle and guard the Dark Crystal, a big purple crystal that does something. The only power that could ever hope to topple the evil Skeksis' reign are their counterparts, the Mystics, a race of hippie sloths who practice earth magic. The hippie sloths know a prophecy which states that the Skeksis will be defeated by a Gelfling, which are a race of little elf-looking guys. A long time ago, the Dark Crystal got a little piece broken off of it, which perverted its power and created the Skeksis and the Mystics, who have existed in conflict ever since. But it is told that a Gelfling will find the lost shard of the crystal, return it to the Skeksis' castle, and fix the crystal, returning balance to the world. Unfortunately, the Skeksis also knew the prophecy, and they killed all the Gelflings. Or did they? The Mystics rescued the last Gelfling and raised him as their own, preparing him for the quest. Also, his name is Jin. Anyway, Jin grows up, and they send him off to fix the crystal. He finds an old lady named Agra, who looks like... You know how there's the thing where it's Homer Simpson, but if he was real?
Yeah.
She looks like Miss Piggy, but if she was real, and also gross.
Miss Piggy, if she lived to be 2,000 years old.
Yeah, and was real.
Yeah.
And she gives him the crystal because she had it for some reason. Then a bunch of giant beetles break into her house and smash the place up. Jin goes on the run and meets, to his shock, another Gelfling. And this one's a girl. And she can talk to animals. And her name is Kira. So she takes him to meet her adopted parents, who are called pod people for some reason, and are Fraggles, except they're very ugly. They party with the pod people for a bit, before giant beetles break into their village and smash the place up. Jin and Kira travel to the Skeksis' castle. Kira gets captured, and it seems like Jin gets smushed, except he doesn't get smushed. Kira uses her animal powers to escape from being captured, and they find the Dark Crystal, and then Jin fixes it. The Mystics show up and absorb the Skeksis back into them, because it turns out that the Mystics and Skeksis were two halves of a race of gods who say thank you, and the planet of weird creatures is saved. Is that basically what happens in the movie?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
There's a whole lot in the middle that happens that doesn't really have much bearing on anything.
Yeah, but it's also some of the most disturbing things in the movie, so I'm sure we'll discuss it.
Yeah. We also watched the making of the Dark Crystal, which shows off the genuinely amazing lengths that hundreds of artists went to make this crazy-ass movie. We learn about the contortionists, acrobats, and clowns who underwent months of training to operate complicated and heavy creature puppets, set builders who created literally every element of an entire world, costume builders, concept artists, cinematographers. Everybody was really living their best lives, making a genuinely unhinged and weird movie. It's almost like they needed, like I said, to play this doc before the movie started so that people watching it would be like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. I understand now. Then we watched a clip from the Today Show where Jim shows off the various puppets, explains their roles in the film, and talks about how it's important to know like the artistry and craft behind the film. And finally, we watched another clip, this time from Entertainment Tonight, where co-directors Jim and Frank talk about the world of the movie and what they hope people get out of it. Jim and Frank also basically say, look, this movie is Star Wars, but it's a Star Wars of Yoda. And then they both seem to immediately regret saying that. The Dark Crystal released in theaters the same week as Dustin Hoffman's Tootsie, and the same month as Richard Pryor's The Toy and Sophie's Choice. It had a slow start, but it seems to have gotten some good word of mouth, and after a couple weeks, it wasn't a huge hit, but it did end up making money. And in the rest of the world around this time, Michael Jackson releases Thriller, Andy Kaufman is banned from Saturday Night Live, which we talked about in the Miss Piggy episode, and Times Magazine names its first non-person Person of the Year, the computer.
Ooh. Look out, typewriters. Your time is limited.
Yeah.
Well, since you said they should have shown the behind the scenes before they showed the movie, how about we talk about the behind the scenes before we talk about the movie?
Yeah.
So let's first talk about the Today Show and Entertainment Tonight clips, because there's not a lot to say about those. Basically, Jim talking about believable creatures and how he wants to create these creatures that people could actually look at and think might be alive, and talks about how they operate them. And it's just clear from both of these clips that Jim is very excited about this movie.
Yeah, I feels to me like he was almost more excited about the process of the movie, and now the movie's over, and he's just like, "Oh, okay." But like building all of that stuff and coming up with all those ideas and working with people like at the top of their craft was probably very fun. It was maybe, I don't know, it seems like it was a very uncomfortable movie to film, and it was always very loud and always very dusty and always very smoky. And you're like hunched over. Jim says haunches a lot also.
He does. There's multiple times he's like people walking almost on their haunches.
They're on their haunches.
I'm not even sure what the haunches are. Is it your butt? Is it like the back of your legs? Is it?
I mean, I know conceptually I can see what the haunches are. It's your
What is a haunch?
It's
Tell
your
me,
upper
Google.
leg, I believe.
A
And your
buttock
butt.
and thigh considered
Yeah.
together in a human or animal.
That's what I was going to say. It's that whole section. But yeah, it seems like he liked making this movie, and it was like the culmination of everything he's learned. But maybe the movie itself was a little bit more of like, finishing the movie was just like a necessary evil to getting to make the movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that shows not only in these interviews, but there's some good stories in Brian J. Jones's Jim Henson biography. One that ties directly to this is it says, as the limo pulled away from the theater, this is after the premiere, Jim Henson and Brian Froud, who we'll mention throughout this, is the guy who Jim first hired to start working on The Dark Crystal because he saw his artwork and was like, that should be a movie. And then they took 5 years figuring out how to make that a movie.
That, like, just real quick, like, the context of it being, like, the Brian Froud movie, that kind of changed it for me a little bit, too, because it is, like, the singular vision of, like, this one dude brought to life is kind of an interesting thing, too.
But the quote says, as the limo pulled away from the theater, Jim and Froud stared at each other in stunned silence. Then Jim started giggling. The next one will be so much better, laughed Jim, and excitedly began describing several Eastern and Indian folk tales he had heard from Lisa Henson. And Jim pictured colorful gods soaring across the sky, but Froud was quiet. That sort of folklore, he told Jim, wasn't really his forte, and he preferred goblin stories. And Jim brightened and said, great, but explained that he didn't want to repeat what he thought had been the Dark Crystal's most fatal flaw. He said, this time, I want people in the film. So he saw it as the failing of the Dark Crystal was not having people in the movie, which I believe is also one of the strengths he brags about in the behind the scenes. But that essentially, when he said that, Brian Froud's response was, I immediately pictured a baby surrounded by goblins, which obviously, eventually, leads to Labyrinth.
Oh. So he worked on Labyrinth, too.
Yeah, his baby is the baby.
Oh, right.
But it's one of those things where I do think they enjoyed working on this film. I do think they have a respect for it and they liked it. But I also, the vibe I got through all the behind the scenes and definitely through watching the film is they started with the design, the world, these characters, what they looked like, and didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about how to tell a good story.
Yeah.
And they came up with all of this like lore and background, but like the narrative part of it just wasn't really there. And they didn't care, I don't think. Like they cared enough to obviously, work on the script and stuff. But I feel like they prioritized the look and the lore way more than they prioritized like telling a clear, coherent narrative.
But I almost think that was like a type of movie back then. Because I think of like Legend and like Neverending Story, which both are very similar in that they look really cool, but the story sucks. And I think that was just like allowed back then. Like you could just make a movie that ran mostly on vibes. And also in a post-Avatar world, that seems a little bit less crazy too.
Well, this came before both Legend and
it
Neverending
did?
Story. Yeah.
I thought Legend was very old.
No, Legend's like 1985, I
well,
believe.
then never mind. It's all their fault that those kind of movies started existing.
Yeah, it's the Dark Crystal's fault.
I really thought Legend was like from many, many years before this. So never mind. I take it back. Jim was just like, it's okay to tell a shitty story. I give you permission.
I mean, it's sort of like weirdly, like I know he obviously compares it to Star Wars and then retracts that statement pretty quickly afterwards. But I feel like it's almost more, I don't know, like you almost compare it to something more like Transformers. And that, like, it opens with this, like,
Why?
grand narration of this other planet and this war that raged on and all of this stuff.
Oh,
But
it's like
really,
Lord of the Rings, you know?
well, yeah. Lord of the Rings, though, has, like, a narrative story. I'm saying, as far as that
Yeah.
goes, like, Transformers, once you get into it, you're not really thinking about the war, about the
That's
planet.
true.
You're thinking about, like, hey, these things look pretty
They're
cool.
on Earth and they're breakdancing now. Why? Yeah.
Yeah, that one sounds like SpongeBob. But I think, like, it feels more like that sort of blockbuster kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there wasn't enough visually going on to, I think, hook, the broad audience. There's a reason that, like, this isn't watched as many times as Star Wars when you're growing up. Your parents don't always, like, show you the Dark Crystal along with all those other films you watch as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, we're still talking about the behind the scenes, but I would argue with Jim, that the problem was that there weren't people in it, because I feel like the worst part of the movie are the Gelflings, who are the most human part of the movie. Like, they're so nothing and they're so boring to look at, and they look almost like out of place compared to everybody else. That if they had made it, like that person that you read their comment on Twitter, if they had made it weirder, I think that would have been to its betterment.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you, because I do think the Gelflings are good-looking puppets, but they're also the worst puppets in the movie.
Yeah.
As far as, like, having believable life behind their eyes.
Right.
And surprisingly, in the world of the Dark Crystal documentary, you see even more terrifying, less lifelike versions of the Gelflings on screen.
Yeah.
That I'm glad they didn't go with.
There's like one of Kira that is genuinely like, oh.
Yeah, there was some that had, like, just solid black dead eyes, where it was just like, oh God, no. I'm very glad you did not go with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the Entertainment Tonight clip, Frank calls this a movie of only Yodas and ETs.
It's just such a funny thing to say. And it does feel like the whole time that Frank is just like along for the ride to some degree. Like, it does look like in the documentary that he's having fun coaching them on how to move.
Yeah,
which does look fun. But I think, I would guess otherwise he was just like, I guess I got to go do this again, huh?
Yeah, I very much understand after watching the documentary why Jim wanted Frank to help him on this, because I do think they balance each other out in a really good way. I think specifically, like you're saying, the performance side of things, Frank seems perfectly suited to talk to the people in the suits working the puppets and explain to them how to make these things more lifelike. And as we've talked about many times, he is the best puppeteer we have watched on any of these things. Yeah. Like, the subtlety and the performance he gives to these characters is clearly just amazing.
The way you can tell that Agra is him instantly is just like, yeah.
There's a reason that, like, when we watch scenes with Miss Piggy and Fozzie and all these people on screen at the same time, we can usually assume which one is being puppeteered by Frank, because it's just like clearly better than the rest of the other puppets on the screen right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what he's saying in that these are not cute characters covered in fleece. Mm-hmm. These are gross, skinned-looking creatures that look more like Yodas and ETs than they do Kermits and Piggies.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the same clip where Jim is talking about sort of the backstory in this world, and that's where he says, it's sort of like Star Wars. And they sort of start to move on, and he's like, it's not really like Star Wars,
Forget
though.
I said that.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't say that.
Everybody in the movie also does talk like Yoda, to be fair.
There's some straight up Yoda scenes in this film that this came out before those scenes happen in Star Wars. So very interesting. But I think the reason why he backtracks is because he says it's sort of like Star Wars and then realizes, oh, I just compared this to the biggest movie of all time that people love so much. Yeah. That's setting too high of a bar. I'm going to pull that back a little bit.
Or also, after he said that, he was like, oh shit, it is really a lot like Star Wars. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. George, don't sue me. Let's work together on Labyrinth.
Yeah.
But they asked them in that interview, too, how much this movie costs. The reporter is like, I've heard rumors that it's like $25 million. And they both are like, well, generally we're avoiding questions about how much the film costs. It was expensive, but we're not going to talk about it. And
Frankton says it did cost $25 million.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is, like, if you Google Dark Crystal budget, it says $15 million. But Frank says, like, he pretty much confirms the $25 million. And in reading more about this, Michael Frith, who worked largely on Fraggle Rock and a lot of other things, he was talking about how a lot of the tech they created for Dark Crystal went into Fraggle Rock when they started working on that. And he was quoted as saying, Dark Crystal was a $25 million R&D project for Fraggle Rock.
That was $77 million in today money, which seems like not a lot. Like, you think about how much movies cost now, and it's like $200 million for the big ones.
Yeah, and I think that's where like our scale is so off because they're asked about $20 million and they're like, oh, God, no movie needs to be $20 million.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a low-budget film these days.
Yeah. It's also fun that Jim says, like, I think we're at the point where anything you can imagine you could put in film. But they hadn't even started, like, I'm sure to some degree they had started thinking about CGI somewhere, but that was not what he was thinking.
No, he was thinking, puppets are the answer. Puppets are the future.
I don't think he's wrong. I mean, I think there's some things you couldn't do with puppets, but like, if this movie was CGI, this movie would look horrible. You would not be able, but it's a beautiful movie.
And I think that was some people's issue. Again, I have not watched it yet, but I know in Age of Resistance, there's a little bit more reliance on some CGI. It's largely puppetry, but I think they had some digital sets and some clearly like CGI'd moments that people were a little less than happy about. Even though I know people love that show and are mad that it wasn't renewed for a second season, but there is definitely more CGI in that one than there is in this. It's worth mentioning too in that Entertainment Tonight clip that Jim says that this does not lend itself to a sequel, but we could tell another story in the same world. Mm-hmm. That being said, in 2006, they decided, hey, what if we made a sequel called The Power of the Dark Crystal? So the Jim Henson Company planned on doing this. I don't know if this was in response to, hey, we just sold off the Muppets to Disney. What do we do now?
Yeah.
But the film faced a bunch of delays, and for some reason, 4 years later, they announced, you know what, we're making a lot of changes to the team working on this thing. We're still working on it, though, we promise, and we're going to release it in 3D, because you know what came out in 2009? Avatar. So a year after Avatar, they're like, hey, you know what, we're going to make a 3D Dark Crystal for all of you. But then in September 2011, Cheryl Henson was like, hey, yeah, it's on a hiatus again.
This is hard.
Yeah, and then some of the people who were working on it parted ways with the Henson Company due to budgetary concerns, and the production of the film was then suspended indefinitely. But then in May 2014, Lisa Henson said, you know what, film, we're still working on it. Don't worry, guys, it's in pre-production now. But ultimately, the plans were scrapped, and the screenplay was then adapted into a 12-issue comic book series called The Power of the Dark Crystal that you can go buy now. It came out in 2017. And I have the first volume. I think it's like 2 or 3 volumes. And I will say, it feels weird. It takes place like, I think 100 or 200 years after this film. And like Kira and Jen are these like ancient wise people on the hill who sort of like go into this hibernation and are awoken from their slumber to like rule on high.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but the real story is a mysterious girl made of fire comes to steal a shard from the crystal because her people are suffering now and she needs the shard to save them. So it's like the reverse of this movie. It's like I have to take the thing that made your world better to make my world better. And in the process, I'm going to bring back the Skeksis.
What does the crystal do?
Good question. I mean, it seems to restore some sort of balance to this universe. It clearly like held these godlike Urseks, I believe they're called, or Urskeks characters in some sort of stasis that when it is disturbed, they break apart into the Skeksis and the Mystics. But, on an average day, I don't really know what it's doing.
That's not the thing that they're using to suck the life force out of the potato guys, right? That's a different crystal?
I don't know, because it's like in the pit underneath the crystal, it seems like. So I don't really understand that part either.
Okay, good. I'm glad it's not just me.
No, there's definitely parts in my notes of watching this film where I said, I think this is what's happening. But you said you enjoyed watching like the World of the Dark Crystal and seeing the behind the scenes. Was there anything in that really like stood out to you?
Gosh, I think the thing that hit me the most was how loud it actually was, like on set all the time, and like how hard it would be to make that movie when you are gonna ADR everything, when you're on set all you can hear is like the grinding of all the electronics and like the giant crane above the landstriders that's like keeping the people inside it from falling and breaking their necks, and like the huge wind machine, and there's like a shot of somebody sitting like in a director's chair and like their hair's going and just to like try to exist in that chaos and then make this movie just seems like unpleasant and very difficult. But yeah, just like how much it seemed like everybody knew exactly what they were doing, and like how impressive it was just to see like everybody doing their jobs, and how little of that really like makes it to the screen.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like, your note about showing this before the movie, I think makes a lot of sense, because when you watch this, there are moments where you're like, what the hell are they doing? Like, Jim will just like run through the set with Jen on his hand, and you're like, that was nothing. Yeah. And then you like get to that moment in the film and you're like, oh, I see how they used that and how it like cuts together just fine. And I think as much as, you know, the story is really the issue I have with the whole film itself, but the production of it looks like almost effortless and seamless. Like you can't really, you're not watching the Skeksis and looking at like, oh yeah, I can see Louise Gold inside that thing walking around.
Jim's head's popping up on the bottom of the frame.
Right, and I think that's the main thing that they talk about in here too, is that they did everything they could to hide the puppetry.
Yeah.
Which is, again, one of those interesting arguments when people talk about keeping like puppet rods out of shots these days, which Disney is keen on doing, that I'm not sure that's not something Jim would do himself if he had the technology.
Well, it's like how the bike riding scene, like in the Muppet movie, was the hardest thing that they did, or like in the Great Muppet Caper, it's like that was the hardest part. But then the normal person is not even gonna think about that and like how they did it.
Jim's whole thing was, I want people to look at this and believe it first, and then maybe on their way home go, wait a minute, how'd they do that?
Yeah, which is great, which is a fine, but you have to actually leave the theater thinking about the movie in order to think, how did they do that?
Yeah, and not kind of what the hell was that?
Yeah.
Which is maybe more the way people walked out of the Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
Especially, you have to imagine, again, people are going to see a Jim Henson movie. Right after the Muppet Show ends.
1 year after the Muppet Show's over. Yeah. They just watched the Amazing Miss Piggy show on TV. They're like, I'm ready. I'm ready to laugh with my friend Jim.
Where's Tony Clifton?
Oh my God. If there was a movie like the new Mario movie where like Tony Clifton got sucked into the world of the Dark Crystal, that might be the best movie ever made.
That's worth noting too. During this time, there was another Today Show appearance, like a week after the one we're discussing here, where Jim Henson again went on to do a live interview and discuss the Dark Crystal again. And the big thing there is that he mentioned that the Muppets will continue. And that Kermit will not marry Miss Piggy. So clearly people are still asking, so what about Miss Piggy and Kermit? Are they ever going to tie the knot?
Ugh. Annoying. Another thing that stood out to me was when they're talking about how hard it was to make the Gelflings. And then Wendy Minderfraud is like, oh, and eventually he nailed it. And it shows her face, and then it shows the Gelfling. She looks exactly like the Gelflings, don't you think? He just drew his wife.
I mean, she also helped design them, so maybe she designed herself.
She just drew herself.
Yeah. That's we've talked about them multiple times throughout this because they've been developing this movie for so long. That Brian Froud and Wendy Meidner were both hired to work on this film, and throughout the process of making it, they ended up getting married and having a kid.
And had that already happened at this point?
They'd already gotten married. Okay. Because I believe in the documentary, I think they call her Wendy Froud. At some point. Right. So I think they've already gotten married. I don't know if they already had the kid. It's funny, on the Blu-ray for this film, there are some more like retrospective behind-the-scenes things that they made later on. Yeah. And Toby Froud, the child, is interviewed talking about his parents working on this film. And he's like, a grown-ass man. And I'm like, oh, it's the Labyrinth baby.
And Brian Froud was like, he was very impressive. I love the part where you watch him draw the Skeksis from nothing. Remember that
Yeah.
part?
Yeah, when he's talking about the design and just like the way he starts drawing these things, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is clearly like the most one-to-one. They took his drawings and put them on the
They
screen
did
kind
such
of
a
thing.
freaking good job. Yeah. How similar his art. Like when they showed it at the very beginning, I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah, they show some of his art that I believe was like pre-Dark Crystal as a
Yeah.
concept, really, and you're like, oh, that's a Mystic. Like he already had those things created, and then they just like Jim saw that and said, hey, what if we made those move?
Yeah.
And they also mention in here that Jim got the real idea for the Skeksis after seeing a children's book with crocodiles living in a palace. Brian Froud said that's like the idea that Jim brought to him was this one illustration. And what I found was, I believe it is called An Illustration of Fancy Crocodiles by Leonard B. Lubin. And it was for a collection of Lewis Carroll poems. So it's not even like a whole children's book about crocodiles in a palace. It was like this one drawing of a crocodile in a bathtub with like jewelry and stuff around it.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now, I think.
Oh, you had mentioned the crane system with the Landstriders. That was terrifying.
Yeah.
Like the idea that they have these people on these stilts running through a set and they're attached to a crane so they don't fall over and break their heads open. It was so much more precarious than what I was imagining in my head during those scenes.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like much of anything. I mean, it looks so good you don't even think about it. But they zoom out one little bit and all of a sudden you can see a giant construction crane above them.
Some behind the scenes things too that I thought while watching this behind the scenes documentary, I was like, oh wow, they were really going for it as far as the production team goes, because they got Harry Lang to do the production design. This is the man who did the production design for 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Empire Strikes Back. And the matte paintings they did, and this they show off a few of the matte paintings, were done by Michael Pangrazio, who did Empire Strikes Back, Indiana Jones, E.T. This man now works in visual effects with Weta. So, again, some legends worked on this film.
Doing of that canyon, it's like, how does a human being even do that?
That's what I feel like. I don't know if you've watched the ILM documentary on Disney Plus. They have a whole section in there about the matte paintings they did for those movies, and they're showing them and how like casually these guys are just painting like Cloud City, and then you realize like, oh yeah, that's what showed up on the screen, and I didn't for a second question that it wasn't real. Like it's just
same in this movie.
It's still painting.
From a production standpoint, there's almost nothing. Like, it's unimpeachable almost, except for sometimes when the Gelflings look not good.
Which Jim mentions that Jen is the hardest puppet he's ever performed. Partially because of trying to be more human instead of just like flopping around like Kermit can.
Yeah.
But I think it also is just like the parts and the way they're moving and the different mechanisms he has to control to get that thing to look as believable as possible. Seems like it was probably a challenge.
Yeah.
Whereas on the flip side of that, you have Frank performing Agra, and it seems like he's having a hell of a time.
Yeah, and he's just like, this kicks ass.
Yeah. Again, the outtakes and the behind the scenes, much like watching the Emmett Otter outtakes, are fantastic because you get to hear Frank's original performance, which sounds just like a lot like Fozzie when he's being Agra. And there's a point at which, I'm happy they showed this, because in the movie, when they're in Agra's lab, there's this big, spinning mechanism.
Orrery or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that what that's called?
I'm not going to remember the name of it. Sorry, Sam. But it's spinning around, and there's a couple times that the puppets like duck, like right in time, so that it doesn't cut their heads off. And I was like, wow, that's really impressive. Like the choreography of that, of like timing your lines so that way this thing swings around and you just barely miss it. And we see in the behind the scenes that Frank messes that up at one point, and he says, "And I haven't ducked yet. Please hurt me. I'm asking for it."
Yeah. He's so cool.
Well, yeah, and the vibe of them is just so different. And like talking again about how they work well together, there's a moment in here where I saw their entire relationship in one sentence.
Oh, interesting.
They're all standing behind a monitor watching a short like playback thing of just Jen and Kira walking into a cave. And they're watching it, and the way Frank, at the end of them watching it, just says, "I think it's good, Jim," is a way of like, we need to move on.
Go.
You're being too perfectionist about this. We gotta move on, dude. And it's like, he says it in a way that I don't think if you said that to anybody else, like, "Hey, yeah, I think it's good, Jim," that's not a thing. But the way he says it is just like, "I think it's good, Jim."
Yeah.
we should probably do something else. This is not the most important shot in the movie.
These two fools have been working together too long.
But I think that like they've been working together the appropriate amount of time as well, because he knows that like this could be a fight. This could be an onset thing of just like, Jim, move the hell on. But he also knows that like this is how you can deal with a perfectionist, is just say, hey, Jim, I think you're caring too much about the wrong thing.
Yeah. I'm really interested. I think another thing I thought was like another cool part of this movie is that they co-directed it. And I'm very interested to see Frank's movie now, because we've seen Great Muppet Caper, Jim's movie, and we've seen both of their movie combined. And now I'm very curious to see like what parts of it are like, because I love What About Bob, so I'm excited to see
I will tell
Muppets
you,
Take Manhattan.
Yeah, Muppets Take Manhattan is not that similar to What About Bob. I also enjoy both of them. They don't have a lot in common.
Okay, they don't have similar vibes.
I'm sure we could pull at some threads and find one, like a matching scene or something like that. And maybe like, I think maybe Kermit at times has some Richard Dreyfuss energy. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's a lot of connective tissue there.
Yeah, okay. I do wish this movie had been a bigger hit so that you could go to Animal Kingdom and go to Dark Crystal World instead of Pandora. Because it's so cool that it's all practical, and like they really could just rebuild a lot of that stuff and have it where you could just like go see it.
Well, I think they did for the Netflix prequel series. Like if you, I went back and watched the trailer for that, and you see a lot of the very familiar set pieces from this, because that is, I believe, I could be getting this wrong, Age of Resistance is set like pretty soon after the Skeksis and Mystics are created, and the Skeksis are going to start trying to kill off the Gelflings, and some Gelflings decide to like sort of form a rebellion and fight the Skeksis.
Set during the interesting part of the story and not the really boring part of the story.
But also the part of the story that we know doesn't work out great for the Gelflings.
Doesn't end good, yeah.
I'm not sure how they handle that in the series. Maybe they don't. Maybe that's why people want the second season, just to be like, we know how this ends, but it all seems like it's going pretty swell so far.
Yeah.
One of the last things I do want to mention about Frank Oz and Jim Henson working together is that in Brian G. Jones's book, he talks a lot about those two working together. And in the Entertainment Tonight clip, we see Frank Oz say, very kindly, I think I'm happy with it. Which was sort of telling, because in those interviews, it doesn't feel like Frank necessarily has the same level of interest as Jim does.
Right.
And in going back and reading the quotes in Brian J. Jones's book, I was like, yes, that's pretty much exactly what happened. Because Frank Oz said, Jim saw the movie in his head. I didn't. He had all that in his head, and he'd be doing a storyboard and thinking about doing it in sections. And I'm thinking, I'm directing here, and I have no fucking idea what Jim's thinking or talking about. It was his vision totally.
Yeah, which makes me think that makes me wish they maybe would have listened to Frank a little bit more, or like he had felt more comfortable giving his input or something. Because I feel like he probably would want to make a funner movie, or like he would know that it wasn't working, like he would know which parts weren't working and maybe inject a little bit more personality into it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But there were some other non-yes men behind the scenes. Apparently Michael Frith thought the plot was awful and said it was a story about genocide. And he was quoted as saying, and what you're saying is that you can exterminate an entire race of people, and then because the stars come together right, suddenly you become some godlike figure and everything's okay. Which is, fair, but not something I was thinking about while watching it.
No, that didn't occur to me, but it is a story about genocide that doesn't like grapple with the fact that it's about genocide at all.
Right, because you have the Mystics and the Skeksis. One of them is complete evil. One of them is pretty apathetic.
Yeah.
And then they just like merge back into one, and it's like, thank you for helping us. It's like,
Yeah.
right, but what about all that murder you did of my parents?
Yeah, and the Skeksis are like kind of funny. They're not really like super scary in the movie. You just hear that they did something really, really bad a long time ago.
Yeah, and I will say the one thing about the sequel comic that I didn't love is they make them more funny, and like they do a bit. They feel exactly like the witches in Hocus Pocus, where they like come back and like the jokes are all like, we've been gone for so long. Like, isn't it hilarious? What's this world that we're living in now? And they're like more funny. And I feel like it's the mistake of what Hocus Pocus 2 did, where they were like, these are the main characters now. And it's like, wait, but they were like the villains. Why are they the main characters? And I had that thought, like, I understand, once I got to the end of the movie, I understood sort of what was happening.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, when I had this realization that, like, oh, the Mystics and the Skeksis are connected in some way. And if one of them dies, the other one dies. So we see at the very beginning, the Mystic and the Skeksis Emperor are dying at the same time. And so they're linked. And later on, we see a Skeksis get killed, and immediately a Mystic disappears.
Yeah. Explodes in a fireball.
And my first thought was, hey, maybe when the Skeksis started doing their genocide, what if the Mystics all said, you know what? We're going to take one for the team here. We're all going to go jump off a cliff. Yeah. And then all the Skeksis will be gone.
That would have been a much more interesting story if it was like...
But much shorter.
Well, but if like... maybe if the Mystics were also just a little bit like, we don't want to do that. But then they were like, eventually at the end of the movie, they're like, there's nothing else we can do.
Well, I think like looking at it as it stands now, the Mystics do come across a little bit as like the Jedi Council of Star Wars, where it's like, you guys could have done more, I think. Yeah. And you just kind of stood back and said like, well, we can't interfere.
But like what? It's not really entirely clear what the Skeksis are doing aside from that genocide like now. I guess they're taking slaves of the pod people, but it feels like maybe there's like a whole other rest of the world where like nothing like this is happening. There doesn't feel like a global threat, I suppose. They have like 4 beetles that they can send to do bad stuff.
And some bats.
And some bats, yeah, that are pretty easy to kill.
Yeah, we only see one and it immediately gets killed.
Yeah. But that's kind of a problem, I feel like, with Star Wars, too, where it took a long time and a lot of different Star Wars media for it to feel like, for you to really understand, like, what the Empire was doing and, like, how it impacted things and how it was bad.
Yeah, like, there's a throwaway line in A New Hope where they're like, the Emperor just dissolved the Senate. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then like 30 years later, they make a film where you see the Senate and all this stuff. And so now you go back and watch that one and you're like, oh, shit. He just dissolved the Senate that we've been seeing fight against him for the past 3 movies. Right. And he just is like, nope, doesn't exist anymore. I win.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, we should probably get into talking about the movie, but I do have a couple other behind-the-scenes things to mention real quick. Okay. During post-production on this film is when David Laser retires due to health reasons. And like we talked about previously, no one currently knows really. Somebody knows. The people I could talk to don't currently really know the status of David Laser, whether he's alive or not. He was alive back in 2013. That's kind of all we know. But yeah, this is like when he retired and stepped away from working with the Muppets. Before we start talking about this film in earnest, we should mention there were test screenings of this film where the Skeksis spoke their own language. And Jim Henson was like, you know what? The visuals are so strong in this movie. We're going to have as little dialogue as possible because the story is stronger that way. He said, dialogue becomes a crutch. If you have all these alien-looking creatures, why should they be talking in English?
That I've never read that quote, but while I was watching the movie, I was like, why are these fools talking so much? Like, I understand there's so much of Jin, especially, so much like dialogue added in clearly, like they went in later and added in him being like, oh, gotta climb over this rock. I can't believe I'm doing this. Why am I climbing over this rock? And his mouth's not moving. So it gives the same effect that the old Popeye cartoons do, where Popeye's like, well, blow me down. Yeah, and he's like commenting on everything, but his mouth isn't moving. So it's like, are you thinking this? Are you saying this? But yeah, you can feel where the test screenings influenced the decisions that they made. And I think with the Skeksis, they don't need to say shit, and they barely do say shit. So I can see why he would think that. And I guess I can see why audiences would hate it, but I think the movie is a little bit weaker for all of the silly dialogue that they added in.
Yeah, I think there's a middle ground there that would have been a perfect solution to this. But everything I've read is that essentially the test screenings went terribly. The audience was confused. The Skeksis scenes went on too long, and people were just like not understanding what was happening. And they were just completely baffled. I think Frank Oz said, like, the movie went off and there was dead silence.
Oh.
Like, no one said anything. And so after those terrible test screenings, Jim and the writer, Odell, I believe is his last name. I think I'm forgetting his first name right now. Sorry to that man. But they went back and wrote all new lines for the Skeksis that had to match the mouth movements of the Skeksis puppet on set. And so they went back through and were like watching the film to write lines that matched the mouth movements. Which is a wild way to do it, and extremely impressive that they pulled it off at all.
They could have just done subtitles, huh? I guess they wanted kids to go see it.
Yeah, and I think that was maybe an idea at one point, but I don't think that would have been as satisfying as what they went with. And I do think there are moments in this where so there's a test print out there. You can go watch a work print on YouTube. It's terrible quality. It's like a black and white VHS quality work print of that first like test screening footage of The Dark Crystal, where you can watch. There's no narration at the beginning. The Skeksis aren't speaking English, and it's bizarre to watch, especially right after you've just watched the film, because the opening is just a lot of Skeksis standing around, staring at a crystal, nothing's happening, and then you hear a ding-ding-ding-ding-ding noise, and they stare at the crystal a little harder. And then there are some deleted scenes in it as well, where you get to see Jen's introduction is not him sitting naked by a lake playing a flute. You see him swimming first, and then he gets out of the water and starts playing the flute. So it makes a little bit more sense that he's naked instead of just like the first time we see our hero, he's naked by a lake.
Yeah. You can intuit that he was swimming, but it is quite like, it took me a minute to even realize he was naked. It was such a weird looking little guy.
So yeah, I guess getting into the film now, as the movie opens up, we have an extremely 80s looking castle opening shot with this like deep voiced man narrating about this world and what has happened in the land of Thra and the Skeksis and the Mystics, and you're learning all this stuff, and it just is, it's a lot to take in right away. But I also think I don't necessarily like the version better with none of that. And so I think what you were getting at is like, this feels like a Band-Aid fix, that they were like, okay, we have a couple of months to fix all of this. What do we do? And so what they went with was a lot of heavy exposition, clearly stated by the narrator. They even like outright say, Jen is the chosen one.
Yeah.
They don't let you discover that through the actions that happen in the film, even though it's pretty clearly laid out from the whole prophecy thing. But they have to say out loud, he is the chosen one. And you're like, all right, thanks.
Do you not hear, you first hear about the prophecy from a character when the old mystic is talking about it, right?
Yes, but I believe right before that, either the narrator or the mystic, I think it's the narrator, says that Jen is the chosen one.
Right.
And so before you even hear about this prophecy or what the Dark Crystal is or all this stuff, you learn that this boy is the chosen one. And you don't really know what he's supposed to be doing yet.
I'm just trying to imagine what you would think was happening if there was no dialogue. Or if there was no narration.
Especially in the later Emperor scenes where the Emperor falls apart and then they battle by hitting a rock.
I think that you could almost figure out. But, like, the whole backstory, the entire backstory of the movie and the reason any of it's happening, I feel like is only explained in that narration at the beginning.
Well, so the Mystic does explain quite a bit of it in that opening scene to Jen, where he is saying when the crystal was shattered, the like whatever it was, like one became two or whatever he says,
right.
Where the Skeksis and the Mystics were created. And so he talks about that a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily set it up as clearly as
just
the narration does.
At the beginning, yeah.
But there is, again, like do an opening crawl. Do something like to lay it out a little bit, but not necessarily spell it out so specifically for us.
Yeah, and for such a long time, too. That guy's really talking at the beginning.
But yeah, that opening Mystic and Jen scene is pretty much exactly the Yoda and Luke scene from Return of the Jedi. He explains this whole thing about like, here's your secret family history. You need to go on this mission. I can't come with you because I have to fade away right now and die.
Now. Yeah.
And they literally both fade away and their clothes fall where they were.
Right.
And it feels exactly like the Yoda and Luke scene.
Would that have already been written yet, you think? That Yoda Luke scene?
I mean, I have to imagine it comes out a year later. So they're probably already making it.
Oh, they already probably filmed it.
But I guess Frank would have...
He would have been at both. Yeah, that's true.
Frank maybe would have already filmed.
He was a spy.
Maybe Frank would have already filmed that Luke and Yoda scene. He's like, Jim, I have a great idea.
Or at least read the script.
Yeah, I didn't even really connect the dots that Frank would have been there for both of those scenes. Like, this feels vaguely familiar.
Yeah. And Jin has all of the worst qualities of Luke from the first movie, where he is so whiny and so incompetent, but he's the chosen one, and then he's like hanging out with a woman who knows way more than he does, but is like everybody has to defer to him for him to make all the dumb decisions and like whine about everything. I hate that guy.
Yeah, and I think that's why I love there's a moment later on where Agra is dealing with him. And she's like, questions, so many questions. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about this dude. Because
this dude doesn't understand anything.
He just constantly is like, well, why are we doing that? What is this? Why would you do what? Why would they do that?
What were the mystics preparing him for all that time if he doesn't know anything?
You know, great question. I don't know what they thought was going to happen in their lives. If they could have told him about this from birth and raised him to be a fighter, and they're like, hey, there's these big old like beetle crab warriors you're gonna have to fight off.
You're gonna have to get under them and stab them in their soft guts or something. Like, here's a weapon that you can use.
Instead, they're just like, hey, watch this guy play this weird big guitar that we've got, and then we're gonna stand around for a while. And you know what? You go kill those guys. We're gonna walk extremely slowly behind you. We'll be there in a few days.
You got your flute, son? All right. That's all you need.
That's all you need.
And Agra lives so close to them. Why didn't she just, like, why does she have the shard in the first place?
You know what? That's a great question, Sam. And I'm sure in one of those prequel comics I have now, there'll be an answer to that of why
she's
Agra
like their
has
friend. That. There's no I just feel like there's no reason for her not to just be like helping them more directly instead of yeah.
That was the moment too when first the reveal of Agra's cave lab thing is very cool. Yeah, because Jen's just like hiking around the mountains, and all of a sudden he turns into this cave, and it opens up, and you see this amazing Tomorrowland lab in there.
Yeah, the Astro Orbiter.
Yeah,
she's got the Astro Orbiter up there. That's definitely my favorite part of the movie is all of the Agra stuff.
Well, because she's like fun. Empire Strikes Back crazy Yoda. She's the second Yoda in this movie.
Yeah. She's the Yoda, and she never has to like flip the switch to being like patient, smart Yoda. She gets to stay crazy the whole time. And her house looks really cool. Mm-hmm. And that whole part is like she's the best character in the movie. So just like getting to spend time with a character who actually has something going on in her head is good.
Well, and I would say too, like, yes, I do agree Agra is the best character, but I like the Skeksis. Not in like, I agree with their methods, but I like them as characters, and I think they're interesting, and I think the Emperor dissolving and breaking apart is super cool. There are a lot of Skeksis parts that I'm like, were like legitimately emotionally effective in the way they are filmed and performed, that I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. I understand why people get obsessed and enthralled with this film. Because the Emperor breaking apart was super cool. Their trial by stone was a little confusing because they just start yelling, trial by stone.
Yeah.
And what it turns
What's
out...
the goal if you're...
They grab some big swords. You think, oh, so a trial by stone is a sword fight? No. Trial by stone is hit a stone as hard as you can, and whoever breaks the stone gets to be emperor.
But it seems like they've been hitting that stone for a long time. So is it just like the last person to break it?
Like, did the previous emperor break that?
The stone? Because the stone's not broken.
No.
Or did he just say he was emperor from the very beginning? And
is he 1,000 years old?
That part is confusing. But I could see how it would read as like a trial of some sort if they weren't speaking a language you could understand.
Yeah. But I also didn't really understand until reading more of the behind the scenes stuff that the guy who ends up, spoiler alert, becoming emperor, he is sort of like the military general of this group. He is the Gartham like commander. Like that is his role in this group of people. They each have specific roles that you kind of can pull out from watching the film of like who has what characteristics.
Especially like the mad scientist guy. He's pretty easy to,
but there's like a high priest guy who sort of is just like an advisor off to the side of the general who like a couple times is like, well, I don't know about this. But then there's like other people who are just like the scaredy cat. This one eats a lot of stuff.
This one,
But when we see that guy, he is like one of the more ugly ones because he has like hair on his face in ways that the other Skeksis don't really. But he's genuinely terrifying. And when the Chamberlain loses the trial by stone and they suddenly all turn on him to banish him, that was appropriately, I think, hard to watch.
Yeah, when they're ripping his clothes off.
Yeah, they're stripping him down to pretty much nothing. As it's revealed that basically these Skeksis are really scrawny creatures, and everything they have on top of them is like clothing and jewelry and like excess to show that like.
And they got like extra arms on their bodies and like.
And it's like a disturbing scene to watch, and you just like feel bad for him, even though he is also a bad guy. And they do a great job of that, I think, throughout the entire movie of making you feel for him.
I think he is almost the secret to making this movie better, where so later on in the movie he finds the Gelflings and tries to get them to help him, and they say no. But I think to rip off Lord of the Rings even more, if they had helped him and he was kind of a Gollum type guy.
He's got a big Gollum energy going on.
Yeah, he's clearly going to betray them at the end, but maybe he also has got like if I can't be king, I'd rather just like destroy this whole system. It's like an interesting thing that they could have played with more, and he could have joined them on their quest, and they could have had some conversations, I think, that would have really like fleshed him out and made the movie feel more like there was an arc to it of some sort.
It's worth noting too, he also performed by Frank Oz.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he is performed by Frank Oz. The general is performed by Dave Goelz. And when I say performed, unlike most Muppet productions, these are the performers inside the suits. They are not the voices because most of these are dubbed over by like actors. So like Barry Dennen is the voice of the Chamberlain. Michael Kilgariff is the voice of the general. Weirdly, the Ritual Master, who is like the high priest kind of guy, performed by Jim Henson, voiced by Jerry Nelson.
You can really hear the Jerry too.
Yeah, and Steve Whitmire is the scientist guy who is the one of the most outwardly evil characters we see in the film. But yeah, it is interesting to see the comparisons when they strip off the clothes of the Chamberlain to see the body type compared to the Mystics because they're the same creature essentially. Just one is like shriveled and gross. I put in my notes the Skeksis are beautifully hideous, and the Mystics are like the plump, soft versions of the Skeksis.
Right.
I also put in my notes after watching Skeksis and the Mystics. I bet everyone's backs hurt a lot at the end of the day.
Yeah. The Mystics look so, that's the haunches. That's when you got to get on your haunches.
Yeah.
That looks awful. And to have your hand out, so to be on your haunches, and to have your hand out in front of you, that would fuck you up so fast, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think it was in the documentary or in one of the Today Show clips or something like that. Jim even says that he went to do it and could only do it for like 6 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, right, but you're asking these people to do it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think he says that they were doing it for 2 minutes at a time or something like that, which, I mean, if these people are like trained to do this and they can only do it for 2 minutes, nasty.
Well, I think that's the thing that we don't necessarily always realize, and I think we've mentioned a couple times, is that a lot of the times when you're watching Muppet stuff, like the absolute like longest some of these people can go is like 7 minutes without some sort of rest, because they have their arm above their head and the blood is draining out of it and it's getting sorer and sorer, so they have to stop at certain times. I'm actually like I think the most impressive ones are when they do like these half-hour convention appearances. And I'm like, your arm must be falling off by the end of that because they talk about during the Muppet Show that they wouldn't go longer than like 5-6 minutes. And when they were talking about the Jimmy Dean Show, when they were doing Rolf back then, they would say that like, yeah, we can't do sketches longer than like 5 minutes, guys, because Jim will like fall apart back there.
Yeah.
But this was really like another level of committing to these full body characters and being like on your knees and running on your knees and like hunched over almost on all fours, but then also not being allowed to actually be on all fours.
Something that really struck me from the behind the scenes was Jim talking about how it was important for them to make suits that it was easy to get out of. And that they could get out in like a minute and a half and get in like a minute and a half. And I feel like there's such a... These days, it's like, oh, he was in the makeup chair for 15 hours. And like, that's like a badge of honor of some sort. But it's so much more kind to be like, we'll just make this easy for you because you're doing something so hard. We're not going to make you be in this suit all day. But I feel like nowadays, they'd just be like, well, you're locked in here for 15 hours, so you better get used to it.
I think that's spoken like a man who has been in an underwater tank for 8 hours being a frog playing a banjo.
Yeah, he is in it more than I guess a lot of directors probably were ever actually in it.
And I think that's because they say that the Gartham costumes weigh 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And so they try to make them they try to set them up so that they can get out of them as quickly as possible, or at least like set up hooks so that way they can like
they can hang.
Yeah,
like okay,
they can hang their costumes on these hooks so that way they don't have to like worry about the weight being on their shoulders for the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. That they were clearly considering the idea of at the end of the day, especially when you want to get out of this costume, you want to be out of it and you want to be done.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to take 3 hours getting out of your costume every day.
Yeah.
As much as Aughra's lab is one of the most beautiful sets in this, we do see it get utterly wrecked as the Gartham break in through the windows. Gartham, you know what they hate? Doors.
They don't use them. They're too
hate
small
doors.
for them. You know, the doors don't fit a big beetle man.
I think they also like the element of surprise.
Yeah.
Like, guess who's here, motherfuckers?
I get the impression that they just walk in a straight line. And that's it.
Yeah,
like
that's
a
fair.
Wolverine, you know?
Yeah, exactly like a Wolverine. Like the animal or the comic book character?
The animal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, is that a trait of Wolverine in the comics? He can only walk forward?
No. But Wolverines, I watched like a documentary where it was like, they just walk straight their whole lives. And if there's a mountain, they just walk over the mountain and just in a straight line.
I feel like you might be misremembering some of this, but I'm not going to argue because I don't know
I'll
anything about
find
Wolverines.
I remember distinctly seeing the footage of the Wolverine walking on top of a big mountain.
What happens when he gets to an ocean?
Well, I don't think they live long enough to get to the ocean.
Oh, that's
maybe
deep.
Maybe if they get to like a tree, they're like, and they go that way for a while. Then they go.
But then they can only like
while.
keep going that way. So it's like, shit, I have to turn left. And if I turn left, I have to keep going that way forever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
I think
like
actually what they think is.
Maybe it's like Forrest Gump, like when he runs across the country and he gets to the coast, he's like, well, I guess I go back in the other direction.
Go the other way. I bet that is probably what it is. Yeah.
And sometimes they stop to mate, probably.
Yeah, you'd assume, I suppose, because there still are them existing.
There's during the attack on Aughra's lab, I love the way Jen escapes because he just like does like a barrel roll out the window.
Yeah.
He just like jumps sideways at the window and just like plows through and like falls down the cliff and he's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. It is really cool when he rides it's an orrery. That's what they're called. It's like an ancient model of the solar system. They were called orreries. It is really cool that he rides that up. Like the movie's pretty good up until this point, I would say. Like it's pretty fun to watch.
They still had me at this point. They still had me for a while here. I have it specifically in my notes when I got really bored. But at this point, I was more so still trying to follow the lore. And I think I went in with a pretty low bar of what to expect from this. And I also went in with the attitude of, I'm going to try and like this.
That's exactly what I did too, yeah.
I heard so much negativity that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go in. I'm going to like pay a lot of attention. I'm going to try and like really like this movie. But at this moment, around this time, they also show a flashback to when the crystal was shattered. And I'm more confused by the flashback.
Yeah. Why is there Skeksis there?
That's exactly my
What's
question.
going on in that part?
They show a Skeksis like bashing the crystal with something. And from my understanding, the crystal shattered and created Skeksis.
Yeah.
So who the hell is shattering the crystal?
I couldn't even begin to tell you what that part meant. Like, I thought maybe it was setting up that there was yet another shard that they would find out needs to be placed in there. well, like they get to the end and he put the shard in, and then the
Aha,
Chamberlain
fool,
would be like,
I have
actually,
one.
I have a shard too, and then they would have to figure that whole situation out. But no, it was very confusing.
Okay.
Unless at some point the god creatures that they turn into looked more like Skeksis
I don't
or
know.
something.
I think that's the most confusing part to me is like they could have not shown that, and I wouldn't have really questioned what happened to the crystal as much.
No, it
But-
broke.
Right. But when you tell me these two creatures were created when the crystal shattered, and then you show one of them before the
breaking
crystal
it.
gets shattered, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, how? But then there's a moment, not that long after that flashback, right before Jen runs into Fizzgig and Kira.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does a look to camera.
I thought the same thing too.
He has like
And
a
I
Jim
wasn't-
Halpert moment where
Yeah.
there's like a weird creature that makes a noise and he like turns to the camera and then he looks back and then he starts walking and he's like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
But like he looks directly down the barrel of the camera.
Right. Were he a human, they would make him do the take again.
But I feel like it might be on purpose.
You think so?
The eyes are so like
That's
specifically
true.
focused.
For
like
a long time,
it's
too.
like
It definitely read as a mistake to me, but I could see, like, it does hold on that for a long time.
well, when Jim is such a perfectionist, you have to imagine he's watching video replay of his own performance. And if he saw that, he would be like, we have to take that again, guys. We can't do that. Or like, in editing, they could have cut earlier and cut off the part where he looks directly in the camera. So that's what, like, it makes me think he's like looking at the camera like, you guys believe this shit? This is weird.
He's like, well, that just happened.
But then he does run into Fizzgig and Kira. What do you think about Fizzgig?
Nothing. He doesn't do anything the whole movie.
I mean, he's a cute little dog.
I mean, there's almost no creature you could say, what do you think about this creature? That I wouldn't say, that was like one of the best puppets I've ever seen in my entire life. And I love he's got the little feet and everything that he does is convincing. There's a part later where he's like running along the ground and then he jumps on top of a rock and he's like, hey guys, what's up? And then he jumps off the rock and keeps running. Then I'm like, the fuck? They like had him on a string and then another one behind the rock and then he jumps off the rock. Yeah, like everything they do is the hardest thing you could possibly do with a puppet, but it looks so easy that you're just like, whatever. This is boring. But he's cool. I mean, he is really cool. I love his little mouthful of teeth. I just was kind of expecting something more to happen with him, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's the most Muppety thing in this movie.
Yeah.
So I just looked up who does the voice of Fizzgig, and it seems like there's this guy named Percy Edwards, who is maybe like the companion to a Frank Welker, who does animal noises, because Percy Edwards did the noises for the title creature in Alien.
Whoa.
He did the reindeer sounds in Santa Claus the movie. And then he did other things like dog growls for the animated film The Plague Dogs. And so I feel like he's getting the roles that maybe Frank Welker said no to.
Or he's getting the roles in England that Frank Welker can't get because he doesn't live in England.
I literally just read on Muppet Wiki. They say in many ways he was an English counterpart to Frank Welker.
Yeah. He played frog noises and the duck.
But yeah, it's also interesting that the Fizzgig is a species as well as a name, it seems. So it's like having a dog named Dog.
It's like you got a Pikachu named Pikachu who's a Pikachu.
Precisely. But I think in Age of Resistance, we see a bunch of Fizzgigs.
The whole time I was watching this, I was also thinking, and I just read this on the Wikipedia right before I said it, this is the same world as the land of Gorch. Like, if you walk like 20 miles that way, you're going to find King Plubus and all his nasty little friends. But and on Wikipedia, it says that was kind of like one of the starting ideas for this was the land of Gorch.
I mean, I think that makes like a lot of sense because I think most obviously Scred has big Skeksis energy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all the Skeksis have the energy of all of those mean Land of Gorch guys, but definitely Scred and the Chamberlain are basically the same character.
Very much. I love the Chamberlain so much. He has that weird little character trait where like he randomly is just like,
He does it a lot though.
Well, yeah, and I even, like at the very beginning he does it like twice, and the other guy's like, "Shut up!"
Yeah.
And like we immediately understand like this guy is the annoying one.
They hate this guy.
Yeah.
They're looking for any excuse to strip him of his vestments and kick him out of the castle.
Yeah, those other guys like pre-sawed the rocks and be like, all right, don't let him win.
It's like, Chamberlain, you broke one of our drinking glasses. We're taking all of your clothes. This happens like once a week. They kick him out of the castle.
That's why he's like not that affected by it. He's like, I'll get back in. It's
Chamberlain,
fine.
you didn't make your bed this morning. Unfortunately, we're going to have to strip you of your vestments.
But yeah, this is around the same time where we meet Kira, who we learn is raised by the podlings. These pod people who look like potatoes are also apparently inspired slightly by shriveled up apples. There was, I think it's in some of the other like retrospective behind the scenes. They say that apparently in like they were designing things and there was some apples sitting too close to a radiator heater thing, and like they shriveled up, and someone was like, "Huh, what if that had a face?"
This looks like a weird little guy.
But yeah, the podlings taught her to, talk to animals, a very useful skill.
They taught her some shit.
Yeah.
And not just how to swim naked and complain.
Like, I have this flute I can play.
Yeah. The movie could have started with Kira and the podlings. She's from a more humble background. She doesn't know anything about who she is or why she is. And then she's got to go talk to the mystics. And they tell her, this is your whole deal. You don't need Jin in the movie at all, really, except I guess they have to repopulate the species.
Which I don't even know that they do after... It's a little confusing in the sequel thing. There are Gelflings in the sequel, but I don't think they say, and then Jen and Kira had lots of children.
Of sex, yeah.
Who then, I guess
had sex with you.
Yeah.
They found like 5 more Gelflings and everything was fine. It wasn't that weird.
They put out the call, hello, we need breeders.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe they could have done something where they were showing sort of Jen and Kira's stories at the same time, and then they sort of come together.
Because it is a little galling how much more competent she is than him.
She even has wings. She's even given like a trait, like a physical trait that is much more helpful than anything he can do.
Yeah. Another weakness of this movie, I think, is it has kind of a like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened kind of energy where when she does have her wings, it's kind of like, she have fucking wings this whole time? We've been with her for like 30 minutes. She never mentioned she had wings. Yeah,
it's like you meet the only other person of your species in the entire world.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, we should probably have a conversation about a lot of things.
Trade notes, yeah.
You got wings? Oh, I don't have wings. All right. Yeah. Maybe we can use those later. But around this time, Sam, it's time for the eating scene.
Oh, yeah.
It's the banquet scene where the Skeksis are just chowing down on a meal, and we have to watch it for like 5 minutes.
A long time. This was kind of where I started to officially check out. Because this scene is cool, but the scene also, from the beginning that the scene is pointless, that nothing more will happen in the film until they're literally in the chamber of the black crystal, the dark crystal. There is a sausage that one of the Skeksis eats that looks kind of good, I think.
I wasn't focusing on the food quality at all while watching that. I was really just like turning down the volume so I didn't have to hear these gross noises happening.
Oh, eating noises don't bother me. Maybe I was ASMRing out, They were doing a mukbang.
Hello, I'm the Chamberlain. Today I'll be eating a McDonald's Happy Meal. But the only reason that really exists is that they decide, like, hey, so we because like the Gartham come in, they've kidnapped Agra at this point, right. And they're like, hey, we got the Gelfling, and they're like, ugh, that's not a Gelfling.
Yeah.
And so they decide, hey, you know what? It's getting back to your and then this happens idea. They then go, hey, we've also got these crystal bats we could send out.
Yeah.
I know we didn't send them before. And the Gartham have now failed us, so what if we send out these other things?
We got these guys whose eyes we can see through.
Yeah.
That seems like it would have been useful a little sooner, but,
Yeah, let's send out the big bad Beetleborgs instead, instead of our drones. So they decide to send out the drones, but as I think we mentioned earlier, the only one we really see do anything finds Jen and Kira in a boat and instantly gets taken down by Kira.
Completely, yeah.
But it does much like the probe droid in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. They kill it. They celebrate.
Sees.
Then his little eyes like, I see you.
Yeah. Is this also, have we seen that they have the crystal that drains life force out of the little potato men? Because that's also kind of
No.
an then this happened situation.
We have not seen that yet. We have seen the podlings being their slaves,
Right.
which is very confusing. I think in the very first opening scene, they're showing the Skeksis gather around the crystal, and they say that like now there are only 9 or whatever, and up in the balcony, you see all these little like cloaked dudes hanging out, and it was like the end of Rise of Skywalker. You're like, who are those guys?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Turns out those are the podlings, but we don't see them hanging out in that balcony until like the very end of the movie.
Oh, I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, later on when like Jen and Kira are breaking into the chamber, I think it's Jen goes like around them, like up in the balcony or whatever like that, and you see them like with their cloaks on, standing up there watching the crystal. But earlier it's just like, okay, you say there's only 9, but there's like 20 people up there in the balcony just watching? Who are those guys?
Man, don't get me started about Rise of Skywalker either. That guy had like 10 million dudes hanging out on his planet with him.
Yeah. Gotta have friends.
They're all really good at keeping secrets, I guess.
I mean, they were the like devoted Sith cult. So yeah, they're devoted, Sam.
You got 10 million guys. There's going to be one guy who's a little bit less devoted than the rest of them.
They got their own Chamberlain hanging out on Exegol.
Yeah.
But after Kira and Jen meet up, they go to Kira's home, and she's like, hey, come meet my parents. Let's hang out in Fraggle Rock for a little bit.
My parents is a couple hundred little weird guys.
And there's a genuinely terrifying moment in this where they're all hanging out, dancing and singing, and then all of a sudden the wall just explodes. And the Gartham break in.
Uh-huh.
And
that part is jarring, but it made me laugh that just basically the same thing happens twice in a row. Like, he goes somewhere, he meets a little fucked up dude, and then a big bug breaks through the wall and chases him around.
Which is even more clearly laid out, because right after that, when Jen and Kira escape, Jen loses it and tosses the crystal shard. Because he's just like, I can't do this anymore. And he throws the shard. And Kira's like, what are you doing? 2 bad things have happened to you. You
And
got
you've only
away both times. And now you're just like, fuck this.
Seems like you've only been doing this for 1 day.
Like a few hours. This has been his afternoon.
Yeah.
Imagine if Frodo was just like, ugh, who needs this ring? This is too much work.
Well, I mean, he does do that, but after months and months of walking and being tortured.
Yes. Actually, like, having bad shit happen to him, not just running away when bad shit happens to other people.
Yeah.
But they wander into an old, cool Gelfling temple after that I thought was interesting in building out the lore without explaining too much, which is something that, like, the beginning of the movie is not good at. I feel like finding a Gelfling temple and showing like these hieroglyphics of the Skeksis and like sort of filling in that backstory of what happened, I think is a really interesting way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. This part did have this part felt mystical, like I think they wanted the whole thing to feel, where it's like uncovering layers of this place that you live that even you don't understand and you live here.
Yeah, like even Kira says, like Jen says, there's some writing here that says this. And Kira goes, what's writing? And Jen says, writing is words that stay. Which I was like, yeah, dude, that's right.
I suppose that's true, yeah.
It's words that stay. I don't know, like, what.
That's what the mystics taught him. They taught him how to do math and they taught him how to read.
He got the book smarts and she got the practical, useful stuff.
Yeah.
She got how to take down a drone from a boat. And he's like, I can read, though.
They still basically knew their mission even without having to read that wall. Reading the wall was just a bonus.
Yeah, that's true. The wall didn't add a lot to the information that he already knew.
Yeah.
He had to go put a shard into a crystal.
Yeah.
But then Chamberlain shows up, and this is when he's, like, I think, at his most Gollum-y. When he's trying to plead with the hobbitses here to befriend him. And yeah, again, I think, like, I'm just going to keep saying it. The Chamberlain is a great character. I think, like, he has the most personality of, I think, anyone in the movie. He has the most interesting arc of anyone in the movie.
But his arc feels a little bit wasted to me because he basically, at the end of the movie, like, he captures them and brings them to everybody else. But at the point when he brings the Gelflings to the other Skeksis, he kind of just blends back in with the rest of them.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have much to do. at the end. I wonder if there's like maybe some deleted scenes or something that happened.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like they kind of forget about him once they get to the castle.
Yeah, I think like he gone back to the castle, brought them back, and still the guy was the emperor. I don't know if that would have sit right with him. There would have been something else he could have done to like sabotage the Skeksis just out of his own greed or something.
This is the point in the movie where we get to see the draining of the living essence from the podlings. This is extremely messed up.
Pretty fucked up, yeah.
We see the scientist put a little podling in a chair, point him at a crystal, and suck the life out of him to put into a little vial.
Yeah.
And you just see this cute little potato man.
His little cheeks sink in. His little eyes get all...
He looks like a melted troll doll. Like, by the end, like, if you put a troll doll in the microwave, that's sort of what this podling looks like by the end of its living essence being drained from it.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the Super Mario Brothers movie. Remember
that part?
When they turn him into fungus.
Mm-hmm. There was another part in this movie where I also was thinking about the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, interesting.
When you see the Skeksis, like, walking down the hallway,
they sort of look like Koopas.
Yeah, they sort of look like the Koopas where they have to, like, waddle back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
But
that's where Miyamoto got the idea.
He's watching the Dark Crystal, and he's like, someday, I'm also going to make a movie that no one likes.
Well, and I'm actually not going to have anything to do with the movie.
That's very true, yes, historically. But it's also, I think, the scene itself is pretty upsetting to watch, the living essence be drained from this thing. But then to see what becomes of it, because they give this vial to the Emperor, he drinks it. For a second, his face inflates. He looks, 2 years younger.
Slightly less fucked up?
Yeah. It even takes you a second to be like, does he look better? He seems happy with it, so I guess I'm happy for him. But I don't really notice a difference. But then it undoes itself and he shrivels back up almost immediately.
In like seconds, yeah.
So it shows that they also drained that podling's essence for nothing.
For no reason.
For 5 seconds of vanity.
Yeah. They're the bad guys,
Yeah, I guess that's true. This is also around the part where Jen and Kira finally do get to the castle. They have this little fight outside where we didn't even mention the Landstriders.
Yeah, they ride Landstriders. Basically, they just escape from the podling's place, and then she goes, "Hey, Landstriders," and then the Landstriders go, "Yes, hello."
They're like, well, I wish we could get there faster. And then these like tall, long-legged creatures walk by, and they're like, what if
with like rabbit ears?
Yeah, what if we rode those things? And they have this fight with the Gartham who are blocking the door to the castle.
They horribly murder the Landstriders.
Yeah, very precarious, like near a big trench that a couple of them fall down. This is when we find out that Kira has wings because they get pushed down the chasm, and she saves them by flying. It doesn't really come up ever again, but it's helpful in that moment.
Yeah.
And then they try to go through the catacombs to break into the castle here, and Jen gets crushed under a bunch of rocks.
Yeah. For not very long, though. He's fine.
No, he gets a little bit Ben Solo'd, though.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to Rise of Skywalker. We're like, oh, well, he's dead, I guess.
Yeah.
So Kira goes on. This is a lot like Rise of Skywalker now that I think about it.
Yep, at this point especially, yeah.
Because they bring Kira in and they start to, zap her and suck her essence out.
Mm-hmm. The evil emperor is the one doing it.
Mm-hmm. But this is also the point at which I put in my notes. I'm getting real bored.
Yeah, I think I had to rewind the Landstrider beetle guy fight because I realized when it was over that I had paid absolutely no attention to it.
Yeah, I think that was
and I was not sure how they had gotten in the castle.
Which is weird because storytelling-wise, getting to your ultimate goal does seem like a big part of the movie that should...
the most exciting part? Yeah.
Should be. But yeah, this is like really when I started to lose some interest, and I could feel that we were getting close to the end because we're clearly at the castle. So I was trying to power through and care. But this is like the next 5-10 minutes of this movie was zoning out a little bit because the creatures end up pushing the scientist into the crystal pit because obviously Kira can talk to the animals.
Yeah.
And Jen reminds her of that and is like, hey. Or I think Agra maybe reminds her of that. Somebody's like, hey, talk to the animals. You can do that, remember?
In the cage there, yeah.
So she gets all the animals to go nuts.
And she says, hey, kill that guy.
Yeah. Which thankfully, she does. He falls in the pit, and we see one of the mystics who's still walking across a
Exploded
field somewhere.
fireball,
He'd be like, oh, man.
And all of his friends look at him for a second. They're like, well,
Yeah.
what will be, I suppose.
Yeah, they don't care about anything.
No.
And then we see Jen climbing up through the crystal pit. And at this point, I wrote in my notes, I'm still very bored.
I think at some point there's like a fake out that Fizzgig dies too. Is that right?
Fizzgig gets
Just like
thrown
Chewbacca.
down the pit. He gets saved by Agra. We find that out later.
Yeah.
But I thought for sure Fizzgig was dead.
Yeah. I didn't think too much about it.
It happened, and I was like, oh, wow. I can't believe they actually did that.
Yeah.
And then right after that, they stabbed Kira, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, they're really killing off characters.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, nope, neither of those people die.
No. Nor did Jin, who got smooshed.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the end of the movie. This is when
he climbs on top of the crystal and puts it in.
Yeah. And then everyone just kind of dissolves. These weird gods appear and say, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
We're going to chill for a while. Please don't do this again.
Yeah. Sorry about the trouble that we caused. So long.
Yeah, sorry about my left brain and my right brain. One of them sucks. I'm sorry.
My ego and super ego.
Yeah, sorry about your parents. I do think one of the smart things they do in this movie is they don't show the crystal a lot. They show the crystal.
Why is that smart?
Because I feel like it's such a big, important part of the film
Uh-huh.
that I feel like there's something that works really well when Jen goes into the chamber and sort of sees the crystal for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Because at this point, it's been a while since we've seen the crystal. And because his whole goal is to get to that crystal, for me, as soon as he walks into that room and sees it, it felt more impactful than if we had seen the crystal every 3 minutes, every time the Skeksis were hanging out, trying to like suck energy out of it or whatever they're doing.
Right.
So
or whatever they're doing. Yeah.
yeah. So I think I admired the restraint to not just be like, hey, it's the Dark Crystal. Want to see it again?
Yeah.
Throughout any of this movie, were there moments where you said, oh, yeah, I can see the Jim Henson in that, or this feels like a Muppet?
Once I didn't actually realize that he was playing Jin. Once I saw him playing Jin in the behind the scenes thing, I was like, oh yeah, that guy kind of does move a little bit like Kermit, doesn't he? But no, I guess overall,
I try to put myself in the head of a person watching this in 1982 who has only seen the Muppets, goes to see this, like expects Muppets, and I don't even know if like you go in expecting Muppets if you feel like this isn't even an offshoot of the Muppets. I think obviously looking back, we all know the things Jim Henson will do later, like Labyrinth and Storyteller, that feel a lot more like Dark Crystal.
This becomes another branch. Like he's got two modes: Dark Crystal mode and Muppet mode.
Well, and he has like creatures versus Muppets. Like it's a very clear delineation that this is when that starts. And I think that is like I was trying to feel sort of that vibe from this, and I wasn't feeling it.
I think the only way you could feel it is if you were familiar with the Land of Gorge. I think then you could pull out some threads there. Whenever I look at the Mystics, I feel like I'm looking at Floyd from the Electric Mayhem. They feel the most close to characters that he's done before, where it's kind of like the lazy mystic who's pretty much actually useless. Feels like an archetype that he has done. So maybe in that particular point, but and the podlings a little bit. I could see maybe just knowing about Fraggle Rock in the future. But yeah, looking back on it, I wouldn't have gotten a big Jim Henson vibe, I don't think.
It's worth noting in the Brian J. Jones book, it says the London shop didn't consider their creations to be mere Muppets. Because at this point, this is when we've got the London shop working on Dark Crystal, and we've got the New York shop still working on like Sesame Street and other Muppet things. So the London shop was like, hey, we're not making Muppets. We are building creatures. And Jim supported this. And obviously, later on down the line, it becomes like a whole thing of like Jim Henson's creature shop is a distinctive thing. But apparently, in the book, it says this caused considerable eye rolling back in New York. So the New York puppeteer, like the puppet makers were just like, oh, those pretentious jerks in London who are like, we're making creatures.
Oh, yeah, and I think This is only based on what I've seen of Sesame Street and the Muppet Show. I think that the people in New York were better at building Muppets than the people in England, especially like the little background Muppets. Like a Whatnot on Sesame Street looks better than a Whatnot on the Muppet Show. So it does kind of feel like they got to level up into the creature shop, and the New York people were just like still making baby stuff, and that would feel like bad, I think.
Yeah, and I think eventually it turns in the right direction where Jim Henson's Creature Shop becomes like the place that makes turtles, and they make gorilla faces for movies with gorillas in them, and they like do a lot more of the robotic side of things, as opposed to just like making things like the Skeksis forever.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about the Ninja Turtles as I was watching this, especially like the behind the scenes where you see like the mechanism for the faces inside of it, and like you guys are just laying the foundation for one of the best movies ever made, the Ninja Turtle movie. I feel like I especially have been cruel to this movie, but I think it works great as an art piece. I think it just doesn't work as a narrative, which you're making like, it's a movie. You're making a movie. You want, like, people want to go and be like told a full story, and it fails in that regard, but I don't think it fails. I don't think the movie is a failure because it really does suck you in, like, and when you know the backstory of it and how hard it was to make, it is extremely impressive, but it's just not that much fun to watch, really.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, honestly.
Yeah.
I do want to go. I'll still read the comics that I bought. I will go watch Age of Resistance now, especially now that the Dark Crystal is like more fresh in my mind. I want to go watch Age of Resistance so I have that lore already built, like baked in. But yeah, I think I'll reach a point where I'm like, and I'm done with the Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
Moving on.
And I feel happy for Jim that he got to make it, because I know he's been wanting to do something like this for a long, long time. So that probably felt nice for him too.
Yeah. I did want to read a few more of the reactions we got on Twitter, because I think it's similar to the way we felt about it from a lot of people. At Whistlepunks said, I love thinking about the Dark Crystal. I love analyzing the Dark Crystal. I love looking at the Dark Crystal. I love the characters in the Dark Crystal. I love watching Age of Resistance and reading all the books and comics. Watching the movie in full is a bit boring.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the boat I'm in right now, where it's like, I saw those comics and I was like, I want to read those. And the more I sit with the movie and the more I think about the behind the scenes and Jim getting to make his vision and like what this leads to, and like Labyrinth, which I enjoy more as a film, and just knowing that Jim has had this thing inside of him where he's like, I want to make not Muppet stuff.
Yeah.
It is exciting to see this like chapter happening in this whole big story we've been talking about since episode 1 of this podcast. Similarly to that, at Lark Elizabeth on Twitter said, I love the Dark Crystal. I love Brian Froud's work so much, so of course I have to love the film. And I love whenever Jim gets to be as weird as he wants to be. Justin Brown on Twitter said, this movie freaked me out as a kid, specifically the scene where they disrobe the Chamberlain. But when I watched it later, I really liked it. So much that it's now one of my favorite Henson projects. Also, I feel it's better than Labyrinth.
Last time I watched Labyrinth, I didn't like it that much, so I am curious to compare the two.
I think the big thing for me is that Labyrinth has more jokes in it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's more humor to be found in Labyrinth, which I feel like was not that this needs jokes in it to be better, but I think it's a little heavy at times where it could have maybe taken itself a little less seriously in some moments. And
let you in a little bit more.
Yeah. And the last thing from Twitter I wanted to read is from the Muppets No Context account, which is at Muppet No, said, I think it might be the best looking film ever made, but it also might be a contender for the most boring film ever made.
I think that's exactly right. It is extremely beautiful.
Yeah, the sets, the puppets. There's even some like live action, not live action, it's all live action, but there's some like real locations where they go out on a mountainside and you can tell they're probably like in Ireland or something like that, filming on these rocky mountains. And that stuff even looks great. Like the cinematography across the board looks amazing. The one thing we haven't mentioned yet that I think they mention in the documentary, and they say, I don't think it will take people out of the film. But for me, it kind of does.
Yes.
Is when Jen turns into a human.
A body double for, yeah.
When they need Jen to like run across a wide shot, they have a human who's like about the size of Jen, I guess, run across the scene dressed as Jen, and it's not as bad as the people in the Miss Piggy suits in both Great Muppet Caper and Muppets Take Manhattan. Like, it's not that bad, but it is very noticeable.
Right, just the difference in how they move is, I think it does take me out of the movie. I think there's a lot with the Gelflings that took me out of the movie and made me think, that's a puppet, or that's a guy. But yeah, that was not entirely a successful part of it.
They're just so much more stiff in general. Like, their emotions, they don't have... Like, you look at the Skeksis' faces specifically, and there's so much movement in the eyes and the mouth and all this stuff. But they even talk about that where they're talking about the Chamberlain and say that, like, Frank wanted him sculpted with a smile. And they didn't do that, but they made it so that he can smile with, like, a mechanism moving. And it was like, okay, maybe you could have put some of that into the Gelfling's face.
Yeah, maybe Jin can smile or have eyebrows or something.
Or be able to show any sort of emotion whatsoever.
Yeah. Besides just look mildly shocked and confused the entire time.
It's a little bit like Pinocchio-ish. Like, it feels like just like, I'm a wooden boy. And it's like, right, but we're supposed to believe that, like, these are actual creatures walking around the earth.
Yeah. Would it have been weird if they had been people and everything else had been... I think that would have been okay. Maybe people with they would look like Who's from the Grinch movie, you know? Make their noses look a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been all right.
I did enjoy the, as far as the design of the Gelflings go, they had like this like dyed hair that is, it feels sort of ahead of its time maybe in this like, or at least not like, you know, a very common thing that people were necessarily doing in the mainstream.
Like
in
a
1982.
punk thing back then.
Yeah, it was like kind of punk looking where it's like blue streaks in the hair and stuff that I was like, that's an interesting choice that it doesn't stand out too much, but it definitely like feels like a pretty strong choice.
Yeah.
But I think that about does it for our conversation about the Dark Crystal. And normally I would now say it's time for our Muppet of the Week. But this week I did not prepare one because there ain't no dang Muppets in this movie.
Yeah.
And everything you need to know about these characters is pretty much in this movie.
Yep.
Obviously, again, there's comics, there's novels, there's whatever to learn more about these characters if you want to. But yeah, I didn't want to do a like Dark Crystal Characters of the Week segment. So yeah. That means it's time for me to ask Sam, what non-Muppet things did you enjoy this week?
You know who Agra's actually more like than Miss Piggy run through if she was real?
Huh.
She's like Grumbleina. Grimble.
I'm just gonna let you figure this one out on your own.
Grisabella Grinderfall. What the hell's
Close.
her name?
That was close. You got the last name right.
Grinderfall's right?
Yep.
The witchiest witch. Nah, tell me. What's her name?
Tamanilla.
Tamanilla Grinderfall.
Yes.
That's who she looks like Peter Griffin if he was real. Tamanilla Grinderfall if she was real.
Well, I think if you just take Tamanilla and age her 2,000 years, you have Agra.
Yeah. Man, what if Tamanilla had been in this movie? There was also a little bit of like a Tales from Tinker D feeling to it too, I thought. And I could see like a movie where Kermit's like running around having an adventure like this in a weird world.
Oh man, could you imagine Kermit instead of Jen, but everything else is the same?
That right now, I think that would have actually been really cool. What have I been doing this week? Well, my wife's out of town, so I've just mostly been sitting in absolute silence.
Like, I don't know how to function.
Oh, this game Dwarf Fortress. Are you familiar with this game?
I have heard of Dwarf Fortress. I know little to nothing about it.
So there's this game that's like 15 years old, and it's like a city builder game kind of. But the original version of it was made with like ASCII. Is that what you say? Is that what it is? ASCII, like
when like the letters and like characters on the keyboard make up the art.
Yes, so it was that, and you had to basically be like a genius to play it. But they just released a version on Steam with actual graphics, and you can like use your mouse to click stuff, and you don't have to buy like a $10 book and read it to figure out how to play the game. And it's fun. It's definitely not for everybody, but I love like city building and management games. So I played that, and I watched the new Mario trailer a number of times over and over again. That's all I did.
What are your takeaways from the new Mario trailer?
It didn't occur to me that I would like that. Mario music's like the best video game music of all time. And just like genuinely, I think very good music, even outside of video game music.
Oh yeah, the Super Mario World theme gets stuck in my head constantly.
Yeah. So this new trailer has like musical references from like 6 different Mario games crammed in there. And watching it, I was like, even if this movie sucks, I'm going to be crying because I'm going to hear like the athletic theme from Super Mario World, and I'll be like, oh, hey Rachel, that's from that's the bonus, that's the Toad House music from Mario 3. Can you believe it? Or like mixing Bob-on Battlefield with like Super Mario Universe or with like Mario Galaxy music is just be like, this is going to be great. So I'm very excited about it now, even though I think Chris Pratt's stuck still. These bricks are just floating here. Okay.
That's the worst thing is that like that whole trailer is great, except for every moment where Mario speaks.
Yeah, I love that there's a mushroom named Chanterelle. I think that's so funny.
Well, and it feels. I think the problem is we got too many movies where Chris Pratt is this guy.
Yeah.
We got the Lego movie where he's pretty much this guy. We got Guardians of the Galaxy, where he's pretty much this guy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is the thing, is like we just have the bumbling oaf, and everyone else is normal.
Yeah.
And he's just like, but what's this over here?
Can you even imagine what he's going to sound like as Garfield?
Hey, I'm a cat.
Yeah, you can. He'll say, hello, I'm Garfield.
Yeah, oh,
it really
man.
is like
Mondays, right?
There's like that funny little, there's like a clip on Twitter where it's like just somebody saying, hello, I'm Mario. And that is like making fun of him, but that's basically what we ended up getting.
It's a weirder like version than that. I think it's like 50% of the time he sounds like Chris Pratt. And then he occasionally just be like, what's this? And you're like, okay.
Why are you saying that? Luigi does not talk like this. Why are you talking like
that's just Charlie Day.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a couple moments where he's going like, ooh. And Mario does that all the freaking time. And he sounds okay when he does that.
That's what, keep him to that. Just let him wahoo and like those kinds of noises I'm fine with. Which I felt like in this trailer, I was like almost like, are they just gonna like not let him talk in this trailer? Because he doesn't talk for most of it until he says like, there just bricks are floating here.
Yeah, and then it's like, no, fuck that.
It's like, oh, sucks.
Don't say that. Anything but that.
Anything but the bricks are just floating here?
What did you watch?
Well, this is Muppety, but I watched Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas this week. We also watched Love Actually, our annual Christmassy watch of Love Actually.
I never think to watch that one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes by. It's like it's like a fun snack. Like it's not that long. It's fun. There's parts in there that maybe you don't enjoy as much, but you can just like, be on your laptop or something doing
I just
something.
forget it's a Christmas movie.
I mean, it's the most Christmas movie.
I know, but I just don't think of it for some reason. But maybe I know.
I can't think of another time of year that I would watch Love Actually.
Yeah.
But then yesterday I watched Grumpier Old Men. Because I recently watched Grumpy Old Men, which is one of my like go-to winter watches because it's a very winter movie. But I realized I hadn't watched Grumpier Old Men in like 5-6 years. They came in like a set on a Blu-ray together. So I was like, oh, I have it. Like, why not? I'm not doing anything else.
How was it?
It's pretty good. Not as good as the first one. There's a big chunk of the movie where nothing really happens, but still enjoyable. All those old men, very funny.
I had never seen either of those movies.
I think you'd like them.
Okay.
At least the first one. I think Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon are such an amazing duo.
Yeah.
And Burgess Meredith plays Jack Lemmon's dad. And he's the horniest old man that's ever lived.
That's fun.
And he's just like, he's one of those guys who like...
He's a bad grandpa.
Yeah, but he's also endearing. But there's a part where he like wants to like drink a beer and buy cigarettes or something like that. And Jack Lemmon's like, Dad, those are bad for you. He's like, I'm 95 years old. Like, don't stop me. He's like, I could die tomorrow.
I love Burgess Meredith. I will have to.
He's great.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, he is great in this. It's like his most unhinged since The Penguin. But yeah, that's what I watched. A very weird mix of movies. But all enjoyable.
Yeah, all winter themed. I don't think it's weird.
There's snow in all those movies. So before we go, we need to let you know what we'll be watching next time. And next time is actually going to be a little further away than usual. Because we are going to be taking 2 weeks off for the holidays. Because Sam and I, want to enjoy these holidays. We get a break from work.
One part of our lives for just one moment, please.
I'll be enjoying at least a couple parts. But so we're going to take a couple weeks off here. But we will be back on January 9th. Notably, the week of the 40th anniversary of Fraggle Rock.
What the fuck? And what are we going to be watching?
Well, Sam, we are diving into the next chapter of commitment as we not only move into 1983 in the world of the Muppets, but we are also going to be watching and discussing the first 4 episodes of Fraggle Rock.
That's wild. Did you do that on purpose?
Nope. I don't do any of this on purpose. It really just happens to line up.
It was meant to be. I have Jim's birthday. We keep lining up this way. It's conjunction-y, baby.
So yeah, we are still, clearly 40 years off from catching up on this podcast, and we're not even to the era of Muppet Babies and the internet. So I don't know how close we're ever going to really get. I feel like there's going to be a part where we get to 2004, 2005, and we're so close I can taste it. And then the internet really kicks in and YouTube happens, and it's like, uh-oh, we're going to be parallel forever.
I think Elmo Fever is going to be the thing that fucks us.
Yeah, but those are a lot of short TV appearances.
It's going to be hard, though.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have to be going week by week at some points.
Yeah.
But, for now, we are going to focus our energy on Fraggle Rock. And we are going to watch the first 4 episodes. We're going to try doing 4 episodes at a time so that we're not talking about Fraggle Rock for the next 5 years. But if that doesn't work, if we find 4 episodes is a little overwhelming, we might pivot and change that a little bit. But all the episodes of Fraggle Rock are on Apple TV Plus, which is where I'll be watching them. But they are also available on DVD and Blu-ray, so they are out there. And I think you can purchase them on things like Amazon Video as well. So there's ways to watch Fraggle Rock out there. So we'll be watching those first 4 episodes and diving into this world that we both remember a little bit, but haven't watched a lot of.
All I remember is that I wanted to get married to Moki.
Well, we'll see if you still want to get married to Moki in a few weeks when we come back and discuss those episodes of Fraggle Rock. So we need to thank our friend Tuna for making the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. Head on over to commitment.com to pick up a Commitment logo enamel pin or check out our Patreon page. You can also email us at mail@commitment.com if you have any questions or, you don't want to use Twitter anymore because I understand.
Or if you want to yell at us for our bad Dark Crystal opinions.
Yeah, keep it, civil. But I would like to hear if you have actual disagreements with anything we talked about here.
Or if you know what the Dark Crystal does, for instance.
Yeah, or if you know what that Skeksis was doing when he shattered it, why he existed. Would love to hear that answer, honestly.
If this was if George Lucas were in charge, there'd be 4 movies about that guy.
Yeah, we can get a whole mini series about the Skeksis who broke the crystal.
Yeah.
The Book of the Skeksis who broke the crystal. That's my pitch, Disney Plus.
And everyone would hate it.
Yeah. But for now, you can follow this podcast on Twitter @CommitmentPod. We are also on Instagram, and that's where we go and post about what we're going to be watching lately because it's been a lot of whole random things. I've just been posting a Google Doc with links to say, hey, here's what we're watching. Go do that. So you can find those on our Twitter account. You can also find me on the internet at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.